And this is when doing things in isolation is tough. So we're doing a logo design, but how are these colors going to look on a business card and a flyer? What we're going to do is we're going to continue. We have a gold color selected. We're going to continue to keep these 3 different secondary color choices available when we start to do a business card and a letterhead to really see how this logo looks on real products. We're going to be able to figure out which one of these shades of blue-green will work, because sometimes it's hard to know with just so little highlighted. It's just that one little piece of typography. It's hard to know until we start to put it on solid colors that are this color. So let's start to apply it to something, because it's really going to help us refine our color palette. We don't have to refine our color palette before moving on to the next step. So let's do a quick little business card. So I'm going to just open up a new document in Adobe Illustrator. We're going to do a standard business card. We are going to use, I'm using inches. You may be using centimeters. You may be doing a different size. You can easily Google what size a European business card is. I'm going to go ahead and put that up there for you so you can have that. So we're going to do a business card size. Standard size is going to be 3.5 inches by 2 inches in height. So 3.5 wide, 2 inches high. We want to do a horizontal orientation. And I want to create a couple of artboards here because we want to have a front and we want to have a back. So we definitely want to have 2 artboards, and we want to have bleed. If this is going to be a real business card that we're going to be printing, we want to have bleed. And we talked a little bit about what bleed was, which helps the printer. They print on a certain size document, but they print a little extra around the edges so that when the printer is printing, it can have a little margin for error. And then they trim off the really edges, usually 1/8 of an inch. They'll trim off so you don't even see it, but it's there just to give the printer a little bit of extra leeway just in case it doesn't print perfectly on that document. So we're going to add standard. I'm going to click up once, and if you are, it's going to go ahead and add what is typically the standard when you just click up once, which is 0.125 inches, which is 1/8 of an inch on each all the way around. And we're going to do CMYK color. We want to make sure anytime we print something, we want to make sure it's CMYK color and create. So we should have 2 artboards. We have our bleed. This will all be trimmed off, but the printer requires us to put our document outside of that bleed space. So when they trim it, it looks nice and all the way to the edge. It gives it that nice flushed look. So let's bring our logo in. And once again, we are not ready to finalize colors yet, but this process will help us think through that when we start to see it on something. So business card layout and design. So we're going to talk a lot about layout later in the course and other lessons that I teach about layout and doing magazine layout. There's all sorts of different projects we could do together to talk about layout. But I'm just going to go over kind of some basic thoughts I'm thinking about when doing the business card. So we have a couple of things the client has to have on their business card: phone number, email, website, just kind of some basic stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and load this in here, and I'll be right back. So what I have here is just typed in, just did the type tool and pasted in from a Word document all the different requirements for the client. And it's just typical: phone, website, email, and then they wanted to have the life coaching somewhere on there, as well as their name. And remember, they also wanted a version of the logo that also had life coaching and Sophia Green. So that's another version of the logo that we need to kind of think about to satisfy all the client goals and requirements. And maybe this business card will help us figure that out. So most business cards, if the client can afford it, they get a front, they get a back. So we have 2 different opportunities to spread around this information. And I like to kind of keep on the back, or the front, however you want to do it. I like to keep all the information together so they don't have to sit there and flip the card back and forth, which gives us an opportunity to make the front or the back, I guess I'm going to call this the front, an opportunity to show off the brand, show off the logo, maybe have life coaching on there, but not to have all that detailed information. That can be when they flip it around. Then they can find all the detailed information. So it's really about the viewer experience and how you want to break down the information. I tend to like to keep everything kind of on one side as kind of an information side, and then kind of a wow side where they get to see a photo and whatever they want to have. So this is where we can really show off the logo. And what I think would look really, really cool here is a couple things. There's something called gold foil stamping, and I talk about this in more intermediate level classes, where you can take one specific object of a document and you can isolate it on its own layer. So let's say I want to just cut this. I'm just going to go edit cut and create a new layer and called it gold foil stamping. And I can just paste it back into that layer, just paste in front. And it's on its own layer now. And what I can do is I can send this to the printer and I can say, I want you to make this layer. I want you to make this layer right here gold foil stamping. And it costs extra money, but this is kind of, I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like. This is kind of what it looks like. It gives it that wonderful shine to it. Instead of just being a flat solid color, it literally has the reflective qualities of gold. And for this client, they're spending a lot of money finding really high-end clients. I think they can afford to spend money on their business cards. So from a branding decision and a branding standpoint, I think it would be worth the extra cost having gold on their business card. So that's something we can consider when we put this together, is to make sure that is gold. We can emulate what gold could look like by two ways. So we want to show the client what it's going to look like instead of just having them imagine there being a gold foil stamping. We can emulate that by adding a gradient. So we're going to go into our gradient panel here, and we are going to add a gradient. Sometimes there's default gradients that you can bring in. I'm going to get my swatches panel because I want to see if I can't find a really cool default gradient so you don't have to go download gradients. So I'm going to go down to my little swatch library. So I'm going to go down. This is how you can load extra swatches into your swatch library. And you can go down to gradients right down here. And there's a whole list of default metallic ones. Let's see if I can't find it. There it is. So gradients and metals. And I just went down to this little library icon. And we can test out some different golds to emulate this effect for the client. And so I can take my gradient tool and I can click and drag to create different kind of spread out those different color points or to make them longer. So we want to have something tight. We want to see that reflective quality. So I'm just going to move this around till I find it. And we can go into our gradient panel and change these at any time. We can double click each little button, and we can slide these colors around, and we can make them tighter by going up into the top. And we can add new colors as well. So if I click on this and I click next to it, it's going to make a duplicate. And I can just drag these around, just making a more complicated gold look, just kind of making it more metallic looking. And we can double click these and make them brighter if we want. Going down here to my fill, just going to make that a little bit brighter, a little bit more neutral, not quite as orangey. Not quite as orange, just kind of neutralizing, adding a little gray to those different points. There we go. So that kind of emulates what that gold would look like. That is one option. You can bring this into Photoshop and add a texture on top of it and do like a clipping mask where we apply an actual gold texture like the one we had over here. And we can add an overlay, a gold texture on top of it, so we can emulate gold that way by using a photo. We have this photo, this gold texture on top. What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a clipping mask so that it masks over our shape. So what I'm going to do is I want to put this in the back. So I'm going to right click, arrange. I'm going to send this all the way to the back so that we have our gold texture on top of there. So, or this could be any color really if we wanted to go this route. So I'm going to select my icon and I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to select this one, or I can just click and drag both. As long as both are selected, I can right click and go down to Make Clipping Mask, and it's going to do a clipping mask over the shape. So it's going to take whatever's behind it and it's going to clip the shape in front of it to it, just like that. So that's another way we can emulate that gold foil stamping. And I do feel like this is probably a more realistic look to show off to the client. This look, we're also going to need to be able to have that gradient we had. We want to show off that gold look when we're not physically printing that object, but we want to emulate the gold look on digital versions when we don't have the physical gold foil stamping to put down on it. We want to have a gradient to be able to make it look like that as well for branding purposes and consistency. So now that we have that deep, rich gold, I'm starting to think that perhaps the darker version of these colors might work better. And one thing we could do is we can reverse things out and we can try putting it on a deeper color. So let's do this deep blue. I'm just going to send that to the back. And we could even put this in white. So that is an option. I think that looks really classy. And now that I'm seeing this, I think we can adjust this and not do any of these three options. Now, this is why not finalizing color until you do another layout project sometimes can help you, because you get to see how these colors are actually used, and sometimes it's different than how you think. So I'm moving down. I'm going to add a little more gray, a little bit more black to this color to see if I can't. I'm just kind of, ooh, that's a little bit too, we definitely want to do dark. And this is where it's all about experimentation and seeing what looks good. What I'm doing is, before I believed it was too bright and you weren't able to see the richness of the gold. So that's why I was wanting to add a little darkness there so that it didn't compete. And if I feel like that has too much green, I can slide up the hue slider and bring it back to blue. I think that probably works good as well. So that would look really nice as a shiny gold printed item. And sometimes you just need the logo on one side. It's just kind of very simple. You're not trying to throw a whole bunch of stuff at there. You might want to use a photo for yours. It just really depends on what you're going for. So let's go ahead and move on to organizing all of this information.